the bike, it has a European kickstand, which is like a motorcycle kickstand. We got to pull it on both. It's double-sided kickstand. And perhaps he mistook that action for what he wrote. I did not approach him, nor did I stand in front of the bike. You can see in the video, I was right beside him.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, clarifications?
I have one last question. The officer, and this is for the area manager, the officer, the witness officer, the security guard, the one that is the witness to the victim.
I believe that's citizen one.
The citizen one. He's a security guard. No.
Yes, I think he works for Portable Patrol.
Or it might have been citizen two.
None of them are sworn police officers, correct?
Right. He works for a condo property management company. He doesn't work for any government agency.
He is not a sworn police officer.
No.
Okay. I mean, from my perspective, it takes a certain person to kind of assess and say like, oh, that person has PTSD. So one thing, he could say whatever, whatever, but it will take an assessment, full assessment to really say that that person has PTSD because of this.
So if there aren't, does anyone have a motion? Are there more comments? Getting my thoughts order.
Are we looking at the order, like allegation 1 and allegation 2, or?
I have a point of discussion before we go. I'm not.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where we were. I just want to make sure, and I think this is what IA said, but the Sergeant A, the conduct at issue, all that he did is, all that he did, but he pushed the appellant against the wall and ultimately handcuffed him, but Sergeant A did not use the taser. I think that's right. Okay. So I guess looking at our standard of review and looking at, I know just that we just have to say whether the RU manager reasonably could have come to the conclusion that did come to based on what he said. I have a hard time seeing any issue with exonerating Sergeant A because what he described was relatively consistent with the appellants, which was that there was a lot of agitation, there was some yelling, there were hands moving around. He said he felt threatened and he ultimately moved forward and pushed him against the wall. I think the manager reasonably could have concluded that that was a reasonable use of force, so I feel like my vote would be to agree with that. Maybe we should start discussion with that one, because I don't think
So is that, okay, so that would be allegation 1, Sergeant A used inappropriate force while taking the appellant into custody. Yes. More discussion?
I'm surprised, I'm almost surprised that it exists as an allegation that is in front of us.
we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, given the history of where this, this review originated and the lack of initial complaints from the appellant, I'm surprised that this is an allegation in front of us today, and it's not just the second one. It's not the German comment. We don't know this is.
Anyone else? Regarding allegation A?
So allegation A, I think that, from my take, I would have concluded it's not rated. along the same lines, you know, the issue of the tossing hands up in the air, and how fast it was. But I would have liked to see a lot more, I think, in the area of the escalation. I just don't see enough there. And I don't think, it doesn't feel, from reading about it, I don't grasp it, Officer 8 really put an effort on the escalating first. And yeah, I could see the danger, but you know, because of the appellant did, you know, has admitted here that he did take it to his pocket and he threw things up in the air, and that can increase the unsafe environment for the officers. So, but I would like to add a debriefing in the area of the escalation. I don't know how you all feel about it.
I would say I echo that, and it's hard because I don't know the timeline, you know, how rapidly it was, you know, based on kind of what we heard, if he rode up and it was kind of an instant fear response with throwing things out of the pocket, or if there was time even to de-escalate. But I think it's a worth discussion and kind of a like debrief around that of if there were ways to maybe try to reduce the fear. And because I think it's hard, you know, because I feel like even though they are separate and when they're viewed as separate, the actions of Sergeant A lead to what would how Officer B would respond. Because if there was potential to de-escalate it, then there isn't that other need. So I think a debriefing is, I guess I agree with what you were saying, where I think given the scenario, it's understandable that the officer or the sergeant was had concern. I think the debriefings would be worthwhile.
Could I ask either IPR or the city attorney, I don't know which mic to talk to, can we do, what's the one if we want a debriefing, I think the appellant said there's no exonerated with debriefing, what is the debriefing recommendation that we would make?
So the options available to the committee are to accept or challenge the finding. If you want to talk about that issue that you raised, I believe that can be found later on in the protocol. Discussion by committee members of possible policy, training, or quality of investigation issues to be addressed at a later time.
In the past, we've been told that if we challenge the finding, we have to also vote on what we believe the finding should have been. I guess what I'm asking is, thank you, she's showing it to me. So our options are, oh, no, you can have exonerated with the debriefing.
Thank you.
Never mind, you can have exonerated with the debriefing.
So, and just as a clarification around that, so there's kind of different findings that all we get to do is challenge or affirm. Any of the findings we can add a debriefing to, whether it's sustained, exonerated, or unfounded, whatever it might be. So.
Okay, are we ready to make a motion on allegation A? Allegation 1?
I guess I would make a motion to challenge the finding of exonerated and suggest that it be changed to exonerated with debriefing, and have the debriefing focus on a discussion around de-escalation tactics when approaching someone who seems fearful and agitated.
Okay, we'll start the vote with Mr. Rivera.
I vote to challenge the allegation to debriefing with, to exonerate with debriefing.
I also, I do think that the situation was bad. There was anger, there's aggression going on. I mean, I don't know how I would put it, but it did, I think, increase over time. And I do think that there was a possible opportunity to at least debrief and discuss what are some of the options that could have occurred. So I vote also to challenge with brief, exonerate.
I also would like to add a debrief to the consideration.
Okay, I also challenge the finding and would change it to exonerated with debriefing. I feel like since it didn't appear like the appellant was in the space of the officer, although he was doing agitated things. I think there's a possibility that it could have been de-escalated and it didn't have to reach a higher point. So I would challenge and ask for exonerated related debriefing.
I vote to challenge and be exonerated and suggest exonerated with debriefing for reasons previously stated.
I wrote that way as well, although I think that it's kind of a close question. I think it's, from everybody's description, this moved really quickly. And I don't know, I think that everybody, including officially the Bureau and probably most of its members, agree that de-escalation is better, it's better for everybody. It's so hard in anyone's situation to say, I don't know what he should have done. I think for me, because that's what we're saying, you should have done something different than you did. And we have to take his word for, I'm sorry, the sergeant's word as true, because that is our role as a committee. We don't have the privilege to say, I just don't believe you, whether we think that or not. I don't have any reason not to believe the sergeant. And the sergeant describes the appellant's actions as stepping back, kind of blading. It looked to me like he was going into his pockets for something. I was obviously concerned about a weapon. And he took, at that point, the sergeant, he says, the quote is, I took the hood, dash, the first retention of my holster, and I put the hood down for immediate access to my firearm. So I read that as he removed that little plastic casing so he could grab his gun quite quickly. And that, for me personally, is the thing that I think, holy shit, you were gonna grab your gun on this guy? That to me is why I feel comfortable voting to challenge with a debriefing, because that's